Greetings all! Today, we will be examining the relatively common water-type Pokemon Shellder and its rare water-ice type evolution Cloyster, collectively known as the Bivalve Pokémon. Armored to a deceptive degree and more than capable of firing back at any offense that comes their way, the members of the Shellder family are tough mollusks that can more than prove to be a hazard if they cannot be attacked from afar. Shellder possess purple, concave calcium carbonate shells that can close almost completely to keep their inner form hidden, and are adorned by a pair of spike-like protrusions on the outer edges, joined together at the back of the creature by a hinge. Their inner form has the appearance of a black pearl, with their main body tissue hidden inside of it, with a pair of large eyes on the outer surface with black pinprick pupils, and the foot shows up in the form of a massive, pink, tongue-like appendage that these creatures use for capturing prey. Their evolved form, Cloyster, possess a much larger shell form, with a double shell of purplish-gray calcium carbonate, the outer shell being vertically split and adorned with a series of large knobs and spikes on the outer surface. The smaller inner shell of the beast covers a large spike that grows from the top of their main bodies as a close-quarters defensive weapon, while their neural core and true form is protected by a black pearl-like structure much like Shellder, upon which have grown their often slanted eyes and a terrifying mouth, whose grin is said to strike fear in the hearts of those that see them when not on guard. The members of the Shellder family are unique among bivalves in that they are not merely the prototype form of another type of life form altogether, as is the case with the clamperl family, but are true mollusks in form and biology, and exhibit similar behavior to them as a result. These creatures are covered in a hard shell of calcium carbonate that is so thick and durable that it is harder than diamond, and very, very difficult to damage in any way, even at a young age, and were once even used in ancient times as shields by locals living near their native waters. As a result of this, these creatures generally live a passive life among the waves, filtering out plankton, but also showing a more carnivorous behavior as a result of their size, using their unique biology and adaptations to capture larger prey for consumption in the wild. The main body of these creatures has never actually been seen, and this is primarily because their inner core is protected by a thick layer of calcium carbonate that forms over it like a shell, resembling a black pearl, with their eyes and other visible bodily features being grown on the outside, connected to their inner core by neural threads embedded into the black pearl covering. Even tests on recently dead specimens have proven to be unsuccessful, as these creatures will close their shells via muscle reflex as they are dying, keeping them shut tight until the ligaments rot away, with their internal core long since expired by then. While this offers some protection, it is their main shells that truly make these creatures hard to attack, as they will rapidly close their shells to protect themselves if they sense a predator or incoming attack near them, and once shut, almost nothing can open them back up forcefully. In the case of Cloyster in particular, this is so extreme that not even a Machamp can force their shells open once closed. Moreover, while Shellder open and close their shells rapidly in order to move through the water, and can do this surprisingly quickly, Cloyster can instead take in seawater and use jet propulsion to blast it out of the back of their shells to move, allowing them to travel while still protected by their closed shells. Their tendency to prefer deeper, colder waters also allows them to gradually acquire ice-type powers over time, making them a formidable force to reckon with on any day, and their ability to accurately generate and fire off projectiles in a steady fashion can make them a pain when tackled from afar. Together, these traits help to explain how these creatures can possess shell armor and skill link as base abilities, while those with exceptionally tough shells can further possess overcoat as a hidden ability. In terms of stats, in the case of Cloyster, their incredibly tough shells make them imposing physical fighters that can more than prove to be a nuisance to fight in close quarters, as their hard shells make for not only a great defensive piece, but are also able to deal significant damage with physical strikes made with them or other hard materials created by them, granting them above average base attack and especially defense stats for a fully evolved water and ice type Pokemon, further possessing the highest base defense stat out of all water type Pokemon. However, on that same note, their special offenses are a bit weaker than average, their overall speed is a bit low, and they are exceptionally vulnerable to special attacks as a result of their shell material tending to conduct energy too effectively, and thus over-energizes them when struck with special attacks. This is further complicated by their incredibly low base HP stat, limiting the amount of damage they can take severely, but they are still hardy beasts that can make life difficult for anyone that dares to get too close to them and their armored bodies. Shellder are fairly simple creatures as a whole, and live most of their life on the seabed, using their foot, which essentially acts as a highly dexterous tongue for them, to burrow into the ground rapidly in order to hide themselves from others and form a nest for them to sleep in at night. Only their foot is left hanging out, as this appendage is hard to retract for long periods of time due to its size, and is packed to the brim with sensory cells that can detect flavor, texture, and other descripting attributes regarding anything that touches their foot. With their foot extended, these creatures will wait until something lands on the structure out of curiosity, and once this happens, they will quickly retract their foot into their shells and begin digesting the prey item immediately, re-extending their foot as they are ready for another meal and repeating this process indefinitely. This same process can be applied to pearl formation, as any grains that are brought in with a meal will have calcium carbonate secreted over them to keep them from irritating their sensitive mantle too much, being spat out when they grow too large for Shellder to have in their bodies and still be able to fully close their shell. While these creatures are able to use a number of water and ice type attacks to defend themselves with and nab more tenacious prey, these mollusks will generally spend their time running away from predators that might try to harm them, and their shells do a fairly good job of protecting them. The only problems that can arise from them is if they have their foot pulled on, which causes a sensory overload that forces them to open their shell, or if they use a clamp attack. This attack is often one of last resort for Shellder, as using it exposes their vulnerable inner core to attack, and is thus generally only used when they need to irritate a potential predator to the point of leaving them alone if only to dislodge them. Interestingly, these creatures are noted for sharing a special relationship with Slowpoke, in that they are attracted to the juices that are secreted from their tails, and will gladly latch onto any Slowpoke tail they come across. However, this fluid forms a toxin when it mixes with the internal juices of Shellder, causing them to mutate into a spiral shell form and attach themselves to the Slowpoke they have bitten, transforming them into Slowbro. The same process occurs when they bite the head of a Slowpoke wearing a King's Rock, causing them to instead evolve into a Slowking. While this new form serves them well in helping Slowpoke become more powerful, as a whole, if they are thrown off in this form, Shellder are effectively stranded with no way to get back in the water on their own until they revert back to their normal form over the course of a few days, making this relationship dangerously tenuous to the survival of Shellder that have chosen this fate for themselves. While it normally takes an exceptional amount of time for Shellder to grow their shells large enough that they can accommodate a sudden increase in the size of their organic main body without the shell cracking, leading to their evolution into Cloyster, this process can be accelerated by exposing them to the radiant energy of a water stone. When these creatures evolve, their overall body temperature dips considerably, and they start to live exclusively within freezing waters, the resultant environment forming a layer of thin ice over their shells and resulting in them adapting a partial ice-type assignment that complements their natural icy powers well. Cloyster generally prefer to live within not just cold waters, but where there are extremely powerful, fast-moving tidal currents as well, as it makes it easier for them to filter feed in the water as their dominant form of sustenance. This is not to say that they do not come onto land, though, as these creatures are capable of staying out of seawater for extended periods of time and have been known to journey to the surface in search of Slowpoke to devour, as they still retain a love for the flavor of the juices secreted by their tail. The act of dominantly living in these fast currents, however, acts to winnow bulbous extensions on their outer shell surface into fine pointed spikes. These spikes are actually harder than the rest of their shells as a result of being tempered in this winnowing process, and were once actually used as spearheads by ancient civilizations living near their preferred habitats, attesting to their sharpness and durability. However, what really makes these spikes dangerous is that, using the same water propulsion system that they move their bodies with, these creatures can force seawater into chambers that lead into these structures and increase the pressure so much that it causes the spikes to be fired off like projectiles. These shell missiles are incredibly powerful and can be used both offensively and defensively, as while the shards can be used to litter the field with debris to utilize spikes and toxic spikes techniques. They can also be fired off in repeated volleys in the form of a spike cannon attack, and as the most powerful version of the move used by nearly any type of Pokemon. They can even fire downwards to propel themselves into the air, smashing down on targets below them in a makeshift icicle crash attack, making them a formidable force to have to reckon with. This method of attack is helped out by the fact that these creatures can readily regrow their spines after firing them, and any severe damage dealt to their shell will cause the shell material around it to overcompensate for the damage and develop a large mound that, in time, will form a new spike platform for projectile attacks, increasing the severity of their strikes in turn. This, combined with their impressive shells, which can withstand the force of a bomb blast without even being scratched, makes Cloyster incredibly dangerous creatures, and definitely not Pokemon that any creature is completely safe from, both up close and afar. Heavily armored against physical assaults, and more than capable of taking the toughest of blows in close quarters in most cases, the members of the Shellder family are quirky but powerful bivalves that can more than put their shells and icy powers to good use. You may have to go out of your way to find a water stone in order to get them into a fully evolved state, but with a bit of patience, trainers can do this with a good moveset under their control and make these monster mollusks into a terrifying threat on the battlefield. If you decide to go diving to see if you can acquire one of these creatures, do yourself a favor and try to only go for the small fry Shellder if you want to remain as safe as you can possibly be. After all, a Shellder clamping onto you might only cause some mild discomfort and pain, but get too close to the insides of a fully evolved Cloyster, and you will likely find their powerful offenses and devastating clamp attack to be costing you an arm and a leg to acquire for your own use. And I mean that quite literally. Thank you all for watching this video. It is always an honor to be able to speak with you all on the subject of Pokemon in a way that brings me great joy and happiness in my work. If you would like to keep tabs on past and future work, click that subscribe button, check out my work on DeviantArt, and don't be shy about following me on Twitter, where you can find pertinent announcements on upcoming work before it is officially posted. Links to both can be found in the video description. If you would like to support my work and help Miguel and I continue to produce more content for you and improve upon our presentation, please visit us at my Patreon page, which you can also find a link to in the video description. With that, I thank you for watching and I wish you well.